humans do this amazing thing intuitively. Indigenous cultures around the world are still doing it and have this long line and lineage of culture going back millennia, thousands of years of that kind of way of being in a landscape, which we've forgotten because we don't have access to land, we don't own it, and we don't have agency to care for it. We've lost that ability to intuit. And that is wild service. Wild service is rekindling what is within all of us and loving people again as part of nature, as opposed to something separate from it that damages it.
It's not a phrase I've heard until quite recently. I think there's a lot of language that we are developing to talk about the ways that we need to think about and interact with and communicate with nature.
For me, wild service is basically just the name for something that people have been doing for thousands of years.
So the wild service tree, Saurus torminalis, is actually a really kind of like rare and I think kind of overlooked and a bit forgotten native tree that we have in Britain.
Wild service, or philosophy, a practice of how we should be in nature.
Basically what we've always been doing, we've always been caring for nature, we've always been looking after our fellow species and having a kind of sense of companionship, sense of kinship for them.
This project in this place really typifies the message of wild service, which is that first we need people to be able to access nature. But then we move on from that to say actually we don't just need to access land for our own human ends, although that's important. We also need to access land to be able to care for it. So I'm Paul Powlesland, I'm the nature representative at Right to Roam and chairman of the River Roading Trust. The River Roading Trust is a grassroots charity to protect and restore the River Roding, mostly on its London reaches. We're also trying to extend our care up the river as well, because obviously everything that happens on the upper river also affects what happens down here. We have quite a lot of local volunteers who come to care for the river, and this is the area of the river that really needs it because it's a very urban area. There's a lot of issues here, and there's also been a lot of lack of care by people who were supposed to look after the river over many decades and who haven't. We're really the main organisation that looks after the river down here, and we're entirely composed of volunteers. We have no paid staff at all. So it really is an example of ordinary people loving and caring for their river.
We're on the River Roding in East London. We've come down to help join the forces of what is already an incredible community of people that are caring for a very, very forgotten river. So we are tree planting, we are picking litter, we are caring for the plants here, we are writing poetry, bird watching, and we're coming together as a community to do something that the river needs vitally for it to thrive and survive in a world where it is culverted, the edges are made of steel and concrete, and it is polluted and litter flows through it. Trees are forgotten, plants are forgotten, birds are forgotten. We're giving all of those things focus.
You know, we tend to look for, and we need to look for inspiration in a lot of other cultures, like in a lot of indigenous cultures who've been having such incredible practices of reciprocity and kinship with nature. We definitely do need to get inspiration from them, but at the same time, like even in the most like little mundane acts of care for nature in this country, people have been doing it. You know, whether it's building hedgehog highways in London, or whether it's doing what we're doing right now, collecting litter from a river, or whether it's building bird boxes. People have always been doing types of wild service. So what we're trying to do is to really learn from other cultures and also learn from what people are doing here to kind of bring back a sense of communion with nature and of just caring for our fellow species in a kind of reciprocal way. So not seeing nature as something out there that needs to be fenced off to protect people from nature. You know, we are nature as human beings.
I want to just actually sit here, dangle your legs off. Just maybe take 15 minutes and try and think about the river, think about what that comes up, maybe for you, see how it makes you feel.
ultimately, the only way that we can meaningfully engage with nature is to be vulnerable in that way and let it move us. Because if we don't let it move us, we're still thinking that we are separate from it.
I live here and I'm around the river all the time and therefore able to connect with it. And we've also helped to open up paths along the river so that people can come and actually spend time with and connect with the river. That's the first stage. Barking, and this particular area of Barking is one of the poorer areas of London. And a lot of people who live here aren't able to go to, you know, a designated nature reserve like Rainham Marshes, which isn't that far away. They need places on their doorstep of wild nature, and that means not just, you know, parks or green spaces, but actual wild spaces. And we've really noticed when we've started opening the paths here and putting in benches, people use them. People just need somewhere to come and be in nature, and this place is becoming very special for that, as being somewhere wild that is very close to where, you know, people live.
The more you tune in over time, the more you pick up birdsong and you get to know them, it can feel overwhelming. So we're gonna have a little bit of a walk, then we'll walk just around the edge, I think, for a little bit, do some bird watching. Finches are like, I guess there's this big family of like seed-eating birds, and the kind of common ones that we will see are chaffinch, greenfinch and goldfinch. Some birds are just really clever, and some birds are really like, I guess like they're animals in general, like rats, foxes. Despite all the odds, despite how we've managed what we've done to the land, they've been like clever enough or smart enough to change their tact, to adapt. And it's often those animals that we find the most frustrating, but it's only in their adaptability that is the frustratingness. They wouldn't be here, A, if we didn't breed them, and B, if we didn't leave rubbish. I think it's a reflection back on ourselves that we don't really want to see. Like the rats, we don't want to see the herring gulls, we don't want to see the pigeons, because what they're telling us is we've created an environment where they can feed off what we just slough off and just don't care about, which is why I think it's frustrating.
My name's John. We're helping tidy up the river roading, and we are giving back to nature by planting some trees and helping to improve the health of some other trees that were planted before. I think these ones Paul planted at some point last year, but there are some further down that I helped Paul to plant. I think February last year was a bit colder and a bit less sunny than it was today.
You know, we're using the routes we've created to clean and care for the river. A lot of the time that means, you know, climbing down ladders as we saw today, finding any which way to access the river to care for it. And a lot of the time that's trespassing. You know, we don't actually own any of the riverside land along here, but that doesn't stop us caring for it. And I think this project really typifies the idea that we don't need to own nature in order to care for it. And the results are starting to show. You know, this is always going to be a challenging area for nature, but actually this area here is becoming an incredibly rich and wild place in a part of the city that often lacks that. You know, it's quite post-industrial here, there's quite a lot of buildings, there's the motorway, there's a lot of human impact and effect, and yet in the midst of that there's this area of wildness which is the river and its surrounds, and that makes it incredibly precious. The service we're doing today is, you know, clearing up that area of wildness. Is an incredibly rare and special wild place. Why should people, just because they're in a poor area of London, be forced to have their only wild space completely covered in rubbish? You know, it should be clean and it should be beautiful, and it can be with just a bit of effort and a bit of love.
What we're trying to do is to inspire people to know that anyone can do this. I think that coming into like positions of conservation, or like a lot of people who are enthusiastic about wildlife, it can seem like pretty off-putting place, and ironically enough, a kind of off-putting environment. You know, we're often told to encourage people to get interested in nature, and a lot of people are interested, but they feel put off when they're told you have to have X, Y, and Z, this science degree, or you have to be part of this particular organisation. You have to learn all of the biology behind stuff. I think really what you need to do is to get people knowing their local environment and just spending time in it, and just trust people.
As a campaign, the Right to Roam has always been about our right to access spaces, but crucially it's a right of responsible access. It's a right of being able to once again care intuitively. We've not been asked to come here, we've not sought permission to come here. We seem to think in our culture that humans are the root of all of the ills, the reason why the river is sick. But when you give humans space and time in green spaces, where they're allowed to be, where there is an agency or a sense of belonging, a locality, humans do incredible things. They serve their space. And I guess this is where our idea as a campaign of wild service has come along. It's to give a name to a kind of behaviour. It's to give a name to a kind of a way of what is natural for us to be that has been long forgotten.